There's the little 3D werewolf, and then you can take that off and there is the human form underneath. And the fun thing with this is that you can change up what your human werewolf looks like. You can paint a portrait of somebody you know or yourself or all sorts of fun stuff. You can just sort of switch it up. And another element that I would say is kind of minor is that the moon glows. So while that is just one of those little extra steps you can do or not have to, it's just kind of cool. Anytime you can add glow in the dark, especially in the Halloween season, why not? So I hope you guys love this, and don't forget to click subscribe to see all my future videos as well. Bye!
So we are going to begin by sculpting out that round section in one of the upper corners for the moon. If you have a glow-in-the-dark white acrylic, use that. Otherwise, I do not, so I'm going to just use some white acrylic, and then I'm going to take some glittery dark blue, and I'm going to be sculpting all the way up to that area. I really love this dark blue. It is such a nice kind of, I don't know, just reminds me of the night sky. And then after I have that done, I'm going to take a glow-in-the-dark clear acrylic and just cover up my moon with a thin layer of that. So essentially what you're doing is you're just making that area encapsulated with clear acrylic that happens to glow in the dark and not applying that clear acrylic to the rest. Now I'm going to encapsulate the entire nail with a layer of just plain old, same old clear acrylic. I'm going to go over that glow in the dark section just to make sure that there's a nice smooth transition from moon to blue. Make sure your apex is built in and all that great stuff, and then file the nail into shape with your e-file. If you were thinking ahead, you could have also embedded two magnets into the clear acrylic. So while that clear acrylic was still wet, you could have done that. Otherwise, take your e-file and create 2 indents into the nail, and then glue magnets into those indents, which is obviously the way that I decided to do it. Just because like I said, if you think about it, do it the other way. It didn't occur to me until I went to go sculpt my little werewolf. I'm like, oh man, I forgot the magnets again. But we're going to glue those into those 2 holes. So glue one in, cover it with clear acrylic so it won't fly out at you. So while you're trying to put the other one in, glue the second one in and cover that with clear acrylic. If you try to do glue, acrylic, when you go to glue the second one in, it'll pick up the first one and pull it out. So just make sure it's completely inside before you do that. Wrap the nail tightly with some aluminum foil. One thing that I found really helps is after you have it smoothed out as good as you can with your fingers, to take a brush cover and use it like a rolling pin over the surface of the foil, and it will smooth out many of the little cracks and creases in that aluminum foil. Once that's done, you're going to grab 2 more magnets and place them over the ones that are underneath inside the nail. As you can see, hard to tell where the magnets are placed just with the fact that they're silver like the aluminum foil is, but just stick them on there. Once those are on, you can go through and sculpt out your little werewolf with brown acrylic and gray acrylic, some black, whatever colors it is that you are intending to use over the top of the magnets. So however you place your magnets is kind of dictating where your werewolf is, so make sure you place them in the areas you know that you're going to want him to be. So for instance, don't stick them all the way to one side or the other, or you'll be forced to put your werewolf there. So make sure you just plan that out accordingly. So the first thing I'm going to do when sculpting out my little werewolf is I'm going to be kind of building in his body shape. It's sort of slowly, kind of filling it in here and there as I go, not really worrying too much about the height of the sculpting. I'm more worried about the outside shape. Once I have the thin layer over the entire outside shape, then I'll go back through and I will add the height and the 3D detail to it. So for right now, don't have that be your first concern. Have your first concern just be getting that original shape down. Once you have that, then you can go through with more thicker, more voluminous layers, trying to build in the exact different details and the planes of your werewolf. When you are sculpting your werewolf, there are different angles that you can have him, looking or facing. There's different kind of poses, if you will, but I would make sure that you are positioning him so that he is at least somewhat aimed towards the moon, like he's howling at the moon. I'm going to be giving him a fairly hollow looking belly, so I'm going to kind of sculpt in where the rib cage is and make a little indent there, actually carve in some of the shape of the ribs, just make him look like he's hungry, like he hasn't eaten and he's desperate to be fed. Kind of the idea behind that. Add some more acrylic, smooth things down. Just keep adding your details, and you can go as crazy detailed with this as you want or keep it very simple. It's sort of up to you. One benefit of adding in these other details is that you're building up some thickness, which will help mask your magnets so that those aren't seen because it's adding some extra thickness, but it also is making this piece stronger. So if it's really, really thin and you don't really do much sculpting on it, while I wouldn't say it'll be very fragile when it's on the nail because the nail itself will give it a little bit of support, it will be significantly more fragile when it is not on the nail. So if you are doing this and part of the time you plan to wear the 3D art and part of the time you plan to have that piece in your purse or on your vanity or whatever this is going to be, while it's not on the nail, consider it to be more delicate. And so you want to make sure that, however you're sculpting this, it's going to be plenty strong where it isn't going to break. I know for me, I'm not usually too worried about breaking it myself, but I have a cat who likes to chew on things. So I would maybe be a little more concerned about that. Not that I would ever let her at something like this, but she's smart, so you never know. So after I've got his base shape all sculpted in with brown, I'm going to take some black and sculpt in some little shorts. If I was not going to be sculpting it where the shorts were visible, then you could obviously just skip that step. I'm going to go through and add his arms more. The first arm I did just sort of like the elbow to shoulder area, and I'm going to go back through and sculpt in the lower part of the arm. I knew I'd want that part of the arm to sort of just be placed in front of the shorts, so I didn't want to do that too early. Wanted to make sure the shorts were sculpted in first. Add the hand. If you want to go in crazy detail and sculpt individual fingers, absolutely go for it. I sort of vaguely did fingers. I didn't do it too detailed, but I wanted to have a little bit of shape there and did it sort of halfway. I'm going to sculpt in the ears. There's just so many details that you can sculpt into your werewolf that you can just keep sort of adding things. I know when I was looking at different pictures, there's some really incredible werewolf art out there. So if you just Google werewolf art or, something along those lines, you can see some really amazing depictions of werewolves, and you can really take some inspiration from that. I'm going to be doing some shading on him with a darker shade of brown. You can either use a darker shade of brown or black acrylic and just go through and kind of in the parts that are lower, so like right inside that spot at the top of the ribs, or the bottom of the ribs, I guess it won't be the top. You want to add a little bit of that darker shade just to make that look even more hollow. Add a lighter color inside the mouth, as if that's like the gums and the inside of the cheeks. Some black on the nose for the actual little nosy. Use some more of that brown acrylic to add an eyelid. Just like I said, you can keep adding stuff and take this as far as you want to. With that kind of a lighter shade, it's sort of a, mauvey taupey color. I'm going to be doing some highlighting on my werewolf. So I'm going to take and just place that strategically in a few places to bring them out. And then after I place it down, I'm not going to brush it out smoothly. I'm going to sort of tap and press it out, trying to give it a slightly uneven fade. That'll make it look a little bit more furry than if you were to brush it out so it's a very smooth bit. You want to kind of almost have a textured look to it. So add that little bit of highlight here and there wherever you want to. If you didn't want to do it that way, you could certainly do all of that highlighting with acrylic paint instead and not do that with acrylic. Add some teeth in his mouth, mainly just to the fangs right like in the front, right under his nose. And mine, just the way it was, they pretty much blended together, but you can separate them with some acrylic paint later. But just keep adding all of these details, and then once you are happy with the way your werewolf looks and it's fully cured, you can open up that piece of foil, pop it off the nail, and then slowly peel it back. I would just kind of pinch it, almost like you're removing a form, like a nail form. Just kind of carefully do it. And now we're going to take some acrylic paint, and we're going to be adding some details to our little wolfie. And as you're doing this, you can kind of, gauge how much detail you want to add and also the style. So I want to go back to recommending that you look at some werewolf art, just because there are so many different styles of werewolves that you can really sort of take from it how much you want. There's like sort of partially transitioned werewolves and ones that just look like wolves, and there's just, different styles, so you can have some fun with it. Once you're finished painting, you're going to just brush a thin layer of matte top coat over the top of him, and now on the nail we're going to apply a layer of gel base coat and cure that. After that gel base coat has been fully cured, we're going to be painting the human form of our werewolf. I'm going to start out with a tan color and brush on the shape of the face, and then take it down, continue it for the neck. And like I said in the intro, you can really personalize this step of things a lot as far as making it look like somebody if you wanted to. So for instance, for me, it would have kind of made sense if I had painted him to look like my husband, who kind of almost looks like a werewolf. Sometimes he's got a big beard, and he would have been the appropriate inspiration for this. I wanted to keep it sort of generic for my sake, but if you wanted to, that would have certainly worked. I'm going to mix a little bit of brown gel paint into that tan color, and I'm going to use that new mix to be adding some shading on my little werewolf guy. So we're going to just kind of blend it down here and there, brush it out. When I'm doing something like this and I'm doing these first layers of shading, I don't try to smooth it out too much as far as smooth out the transitions from one color to the next, knowing that the more layers I add to it, the smoother that will look. And when you apply your top coat later on, it has this magical way of just blending things together, and it looks fantastic. I am going to use a dark shade of brown similar to my werewolf's color to add his hair and his beard. For instance, if you were to do somebody, if your little inspiration human had black hair, maybe you'd want to make your werewolf a little darker, a little bit more black. If they were blonde, maybe you'd want to make it a little lighter, gray, etc. I'm going to be giving my little werewolf man some chest hair, some eyebrows, kind of outline his eyes with that dark brown color that I used for his hair. Continue down, do a little bit of outlining around his nose. Just kind of depict all of those important little details that you don't want to forget. A little bit of lips underneath his mustache before the other part of his beard. Just go through and add all of those. I'm going to do a little bit of a darker shade here and there on his body, bring out some of that shading where I feel like it needs to be. Anywhere that you feel needs to just be a little bit more defined. And this is the same thing. You can keep this as simple as you want or go as crazy as you want. Once I have that done, I'm going to give him a little bit of highlighting in his hair just so it's not just a monotone but has some texture to it. And then we're going to go through and just finish up any of the details that are missing. So you're going to need to finish detailing his eyes, add any more highlights or lowlights that you feel are missing. And then if you want to, the last real detail to add after everything on his face is finished is that you may consider adding a shirt. And that is completely up to your discretion. If you do decide to give him a shirt, I would recommend doing one that isn't too flashy. And maybe for like what I just did is I just gave him a gray, very, very plain Jane shirt. So I'm just going to first kind of outline that, and I'm going to make it ripped. So it's not going to fully cover his torso. And if you were intending to fully cover his chest, don't worry about painting in things like chest hair and all of those little details. You can skip out on some of those because if they're just going to be covered up anyway, there's really no use in it. So there's the first base layer of his shirt, and then you can go through and do some highlighting on that. If you wanted to give him like a lumberjack style shirt, you could maybe put on a little bit of a gingham or some kind of a plaid on there. Otherwise, you can keep it pretty plain and simple and just make it look a little bit like it's been ripped up. And then I'm just going to continually flash cure here and there with my flash cure flashlight anytime I feel like it's needed. Add a couple final little bits of outlines. Make sure you don't forget his pupils. I know that's one step that I always try to save for the end. I feel like it's a finishing step, and it's somewhat satisfying to get to put in the pupils at the end of painting a portrait or something like this, because it's such a almost rewarding experience because you know you're done and you're just doing those little final last things. Going to apply a layer of gel top coat over this nail, cure it, and then this is all done, and you can see how it looks. Matte gel top coat over my werewolf painting. And you can put your werewolf sculpture back on top of your guy, and that is it. He can transition. It glows in the dark, albeit it doesn't look that impressive, the glow in the dark element on camera, but it is still really fun just to look at and know that is there as well. And I hope you guys love this, and I will see you next time. Bye!